everyone. Welcome to the Name One Player podcast. My name is Nicole. I am your host. And before we get into anything, I just want to say a huge thank you to every single person who is listening right now. If you are a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. It honestly makes me so happy to know that you listened to an episode in the past and you thought, I'm going to come back because this is a really cool show. I agree with you. I think it is a really cool show, and I'm just so happy that you are here. On the flip side of that, if you are a new listener, welcome. I am also so happy that you are here. I don't know how you found the show, but I sure am happy that you did, and we're gonna have a good time. We are going to have a good time, I promise you. The Name One Player podcast is a place for women to talk openly about the sports that they love without ever being asked to name one player. I promise you I'm not going to do that because it is really annoying. Any person who's listening, any man who's listening in particular, trust me, it's annoying. If you've ever done that, send an apology because it's annoying. Don't do that, okay? Today we have a fun episode. The Women's European Championship for football, soccer, if you will, has wrapped up quite recently, and England has won for the second time in a row. And I love it. I absolutely love it. For those of you who don't know, I used to live in London, and the football culture obviously is so huge, but there's a bit of a difference between the men and the women. And it's funny, well, I don't think people in England will find this funny, but the men have lost the European Championships twice in a row now. But the women have won twice in a row now. And I always laugh when people say, like, England keeps losing the Euros. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You won the Euros. Hello? Your women won. The Lionesses won. What are you talking about? So I definitely wanted to do an episode just talking about England and their win and really the whole tournament. But then also just, touching on the differences, particularly in Europe, regarding gender and football. And there is a bit of a viral clip going around right now with somebody saying that they feel like women's football is being forced down their throat. And I just wanted to have a conversation about that. And today we have a wonderful guest on. We have Maddie. She is a sports journalist all the way from Scotland. So she's going to give us an unbiased opinion on the England win. She actually was in Switzerland for the European Championship, and she watched the final. She was there in person watching those penalties, England, Spain, seeing England win, and we're going to get all of her thoughts on the tournament. We're going to get her thoughts on England winning, and we're going to get her thoughts on what it is like being a woman working in football, particularly in Scotland, in Europe. So I think that's enough from me. I think we'll just hop into the episode. So without further ado, everyone please welcome Maddie. All right, everyone, we have Maddie here with us. Maddie, how are you doing today?
Awesome. How are you doing today?
I am doing really well. Thank you so much for coming on all the way from Scotland. I mean, we've had a couple people from England on. I don't think we've ever had anybody from outside of England. So our first Scottish guest, hopefully one of many more countries. But thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, so for everybody listening, let everybody know a little bit about yourself.
So, as you said, my name is Maddie Jamieson. Primarily work as a journalist and as a kind of content creator in the sporting space, primarily with women's football. Prior to that, I worked for a company as kind of a content specialist. And when I say specialist, I mean one of those people who does literally everything. Again, in kind of the sporting space, but because they were a Canadian company, I did a lot more NFL, a lot more NBA, and that really involved anything from the kind of journalistic side, getting stories, doing interviews, to managing people and editing and all that good stuff. So yeah, I worked there for about 4 years, and then I moved back home and got another job too.
So you started working in sports journalism then. How did you get into that? Did you always know that you wanted to work in the sports atmosphere, or was it something that just fell into your lap?
Yeah, so I guess in order to get into that, I'll get into like a bit of Maddie lore, Maddie backstory.
Love that.
When I was a kid, I played football, soccer for you, but I don't know how much you know about the women's kind of soccer space in the UK, but about 50 years ago it was banned for women to play soccer.
Mm-hmm.
In Scotland, that only came out of being banned in 1974, but then the
Oh,
FA only just took responsibility for women's football in 1998, which is basically just after I was born.
that's wild. I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was that recent.
Yeah. And so because it was so recent, a lot of the infrastructure is not quite there, and it's never quite recovered from that long period of being banned, particularly in Scotland, because again, our ban lasted a little bit longer than the English ban.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was growing up, I would go to these football sessions and there would be like two other girls there. And how do you run an 11-a-side game, when there's three kids in total? So as much as the coaches did everything that they could for us, it wasn't a viable sport for me to play. And
Yeah.
so I was going to football every weekend with my dad, and the only other girls in the room were cheerleaders. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to be a cheerleader now. And so I joined the cheerleading club. And before I knew it, that grew arms and legs. And then I was competing for Scotland. And then I was coaching the Scottish national team. And then I was working for the Federation for Cheerleading and Dance in Scotland as a kind of communications expert. And so I did that for a number of years, kind of towards the end of my university tenure. And then when I left and graduated, I tried to get normal jobs, quote unquote. I didn't have a great time with that. I didn't enjoy any of them because my passion has always been in sports, and particularly in team sports. And so when I was laid off at the start of COVID from an office job that I had kind of just been biding my time with, an opportunity came up with this Canadian company, and they kind of said, you can write, you like sports, why don't you try writing about sports? So they just took a chance and gave me a bit of a trial on a freelance basis, and then I loved it. And so I've never left.
Oh my God, that is so cool. Also, I used to do cheerleading as well. I feel like maybe I'm making this up, but I went to Worlds back. I was so young. I was in grade 7. I don't know what that necessarily is for you. But I remember Scotland was there
Oh my
competing. So maybe there's some weird crossover that we don't even know exists with us. Crazy. Okay, that's so cool. I absolutely love that. Really just the timing was right for you. Obviously, being laid off from your job during COVID is horrible and really crappy that you had to go through that, but I'm glad that it led you to something that you really love, that you're really happy in. And now you're currently working in Scotland as a journalist, is that right?
Yeah. So quite lucky because I work for a company called Her Football Hub as a senior journalist there, as well as an editor for a different company. And so doing everything kind of on a freelance basis really allows me the flexibility to take what works for me and to let go of what maybe doesn't. And so for me, I have a real passion for traveling. And so right now I love going all across Europe. So I was quite recently in Switzerland, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Before that, I was in Vienna, Budapest, Prague. Before that, I was in Spain for quite an extended period. I'll be in Portugal in just a few weeks. And so, really, having that flexibility to work all over has been really exciting.
Oh my gosh, you're living the dream. That's absolutely amazing. I'm so happy for you. Yeah, I mean, let's just hop into it because the reason that I had you on today is to talk about Switzerland and the European Championship for football. Let's get into it. So, did you go for work? Did you go just because you wanted to go? How did you find yourself there?
So, I guess to give you the pretext to that is that I had no idea whether or not I was going to get hired to do anything because I usually work on
Okay.
a freelance basis.
Yes.
I didn't know if there would be any interest in me doing content there, but I knew that I didn't want to wait and find out. I wanted to
Mhm.
know that I was going to Switzerland. As soon as tickets went on sale, I just bought tickets. I snapped them up as soon as I could. So I got 2 tickets for the quarterfinal, both semi-finals, and then the final as well.
Nice.
And when I was kind of talking to my family beforehand, my dad, who's a big football fan, said, would you mind if I come with you? You have a spare ticket. And I was like, of course you can come with me. So me and my dad ended up going out to Switzerland, not on a work basis, purely
Okay.
for joy, for the fun. And then, of course, because you're in that environment, you end up picking up little bits of work and doing some content creation and things. But yeah, it was truly supposed to be like a wholesome trip with my dad.
Tell me a little bit about your experience there. How was it watching all of the games?
It was incredible. I will say I was quite skeptical going into Switzerland as a host
Mhm.
country just because while it's small and there's a lot of really, really great infrastructure there, Switzerland is not known for having a huge football culture around Europe in the way that maybe the Italians are. It's not known for having the best stadiums. It's not known for really embracing those kind of large scale events. And also it's really expensive. It's one of the most expensive places in Europe to go and stay. And so it was with a healthy dose of skepticism I'd say that I approached the tournament. But when we actually got there, firstly, the infrastructure in Switzerland is just incredible. We started coining the phrase Swiss efficiency because the way that they operate public transport is like they are living in the next century. It's incredible. The foresight that they had in organising logistics surrounding the games was incredible too. Here's an example. Obviously, they knew that when the games ended, there would be a lot of fans moving to the city centres very quickly after the game. So rather than just, add a couple of extra trams here and there to try and deal with that traffic, they basically just backlogged trams at the stop right outside the stadium, and they just fill one up and send it, and fill one up and send it, and move it forward. And it was just such an efficient way of moving people around. It was brilliant. They also gave us kind of free public transport on the day of the game to get to the stadium and back from wherever you were located within Switzerland. So, for example, if you made your base in Zurich for 2 weeks, you could go off to Bern, off to Geneva. As long as you came back on a return ticket, your transit would be free for the game day, which was
Wow.
exceptional. Another way to kind of lower the cost in a very expensive environment, which was phenomenal. Every single host city which was hosting a game had a fan zone. They were all quite similar, and the sponsors that were there and the kind of activities that you could do. But again, it just really added to the sense of kind of excitement around it. And I'd say that the first day that I got in was the day that Spain were playing Switzerland in the knockouts. And I'd say that the Swiss truly embraced the competition. I was sitting in a bar and there were so many, kind of middle-aged men in their Switzerland tops getting really, really excited about this game. And it's just not something that you see right now in the women's tournaments super often. So overall, Switzerland as a host country, I think, kind of knocked it out the park.
That transit idea of just popping those trains out, like, that seems so like common sense, but it's like, why isn't every city doing this? So yeah, amazing for Switzerland. That's good. I'm glad that you had a great time. Really cool note how you were saying about the men in the bars wearing their Swiss gear, and we will get into that and the culture in Europe. You got to see, did you see 4 games? Is that correct?
4 games, all of
Okay.
them went in extra time. 2 of them went penalties.
Oh my, that's exciting. Okay, so I guess going into the final, or actually, question for you, I didn't really have this, I didn't let you know this before. Did you have a favorite game, a favorite match that you had watched?
Yeah, absolutely.
And which was that?
So my favorite game was actually, I think, the first one that I went to go and see. It was the quarter final. It was France versus Germany.
Okay.
And in that game, it's gone a little viral because within the first 13 minutes, Germany had a player sent off, red card
Okay.
for hair pulling, which is very illegal in football and is a straight red card. And for basically the next, however many minutes, best part of 2 hours, Germany just defended for their lives with 10 women on the park. They were so relentless, like their work ethic was ridiculous. Me and my dad went in as neutrals. We were sitting in the crowd, really no attachment to either team. But by the end of it, when it came to penalty shootout, we were so rooting for Germany because the grit, the work ethic, the heart that they put on the pitch was so inspiring.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was by far the coolest game, I think.
Did they win? Did Germany win?
They did. They did. That was crazy.
Good for Germany for coming back from that. Obviously, they did not make it to the finals. And you said that you were going into the game neutral. I didn't even look into this, and I'm sorry if this is offensive. I imagine Scotland was not in the mix for any of the games.
You are very correct.
Okay. So Question for you then. Were you just going into this whole tournament neutral here? Did you have anybody that you wanted to win? And then specifically for the final that you were watching, England and Spain, were you rooting for any country?
So before the tournament, again, Scotland didn't qualify, so I didn't really have a horse in the race as such. I think, Wales and Scotland always have a nice camaraderie, so I guess it would have been nice to see Wales do well.
Okay.
Obviously, they were allotted a very, very difficult group, so it was kind of over before it started. But as far as other teams, I had France as the team to watch this tournament just because I think a lot of those players play in the French league. They're constantly underrated because people outside of France maybe aren't looking at that league as super competitive and highly entertaining right now. And
Hmm.
so, I think that those players all playing together quite regularly really creates a sense of knowledge and connectedness that a lot of other teams maybe suffer with when their players go out and play internationally. And yeah, France made some bold decisions going into this tournament. They had a new manager who made the decision not to take some really, highly capped veteran players to the tournament in favour of younger, fresher legs. Yeah, it was for me the team to watch. I wouldn't say I was rooting for them, but then obviously when the Germany game happened, I think my allegiance changed pretty quickly. Then going into kind of England and Spain, I've spent a lot of time in Spain. I've covered Spain pretty extensively, and I find Spain really difficult to root for because, as brilliant as these players are, the federation has so abused, neglected, and mismanaged this women's team
Yeah.
to the point where, any success that they have is quite bittersweet because as much as these players deserve it, the federation, the management does not. England and Scotland obviously have a long-standing rivalry. I'm not sure that that extends to the Lionesses, just because we watch them quite often. The Scottish Women's Premier League isn't as big as the WSL, which is the English Domestic League. And so the English Domestic League's really what we watch on television, for example.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and so, I switch on my television and I'm watching Lucy Bronze in Chelsea and I'm watching Chloe Kelly at Arsenal. And so you kind of get to know the players, you develop a certain affection for them. And then, yeah, I think that kind of translates to Lionesses as being a team with a really large and wide reaching fan base.
Yeah, okay, that makes total sense. Because I was thinking too, and again, tangent here, but I mean, Scotland is a part of the United Kingdom, and you have your Olympics, and you're all Team GB, but you do have that rivalry between Scotland and England. So I'm like, do you just automatically cheer for England? But sounds like that's not the case. So I was really looking forward to asking you that question. So great answer. Thank you. So when you were at that final, were you expecting a country to win? Did you have any thoughts on who might win that game?
Yeah, I think because England had been so lucky throughout the tournament, the penalty shootout against Sweden being the prime example where, everyone was missing penalties. It just so happened that Sweden missed more. I think England had been so lucky, they'd always found a way to just get it over the edge that I thought, coming up against Spain, that would be their downfall because the Spanish team are just so talented, includes a lot of the best players in the world. And again, most players on that Spanish team that are actively involved in the game on the pitch play for Barcelona, and so they're playing week in, week out with one another. So I thought that Spain was going to win. My dad, however, said, and he has a great football brain, he said absolutely no way. England have had this sense of luck, this sense of momentum throughout the tournament. There's
Yeah.
no way that they're going to lose it now. So he called it, and I didn't.
Okay, okay. Well, I mean, I feel like, well, okay, this is, and it's a bit of a running joke on this podcast. I mention the Minnesota Vikings any chance that I can because I'm a huge fan of them. But I feel like for me, when I think about luck, I kind of was on the opposite side of your dad because I'm like, luck will run out. It will run out 100%. So, not really about rooting or anything. I mean, of course, it's a great story to have the Lionesses win twice and everything going on with their players, and the one who had a broken tibia the whole time. Like, it's a great story to win twice in a row there. But I was like, I think the luck's gonna run out. I was not expecting it to go as far as it did. So, really exciting that it did. I guess unfortunate for Spain that it didn't. And these penalties, oh my goodness. I think, and I don't follow European football all that much. It's really exciting to watch when I do sit down and watch it. But these penalties, I don't think my heart could handle it. Like, oh my gosh, especially for England, for the men and the women, it's just, oh my gosh, that country, yikes, it's a tough one for them. But again, I'm happy for the women that it ends up working out for them.
Yeah, nerves of steel for sure. I do
Yes.
not enjoy penalties. I don't enjoy them as a professional nor as a casual fan. It was what it was. And I think, for Spain, that's such a painful way to lose, especially, just the players who missed penalties are probably amongst Spain's most reliable,
Yeah.
amongst Spain's superstars. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate. But also the joy of sports is that, there's a World Cup in 2 years, there's an Olympic in 3 years. And so it's all cyclical. I'm sure we'll see them win soon.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so moving on a little bit, still discussing the tournament, but you touched on this before, and I really had no idea the extent of how, I guess, bad it was in Scotland. But I was going to ask you, the football culture, and specifically the women's football culture in Europe. So I actually lived in London for about a year and a half, and I was there during the men's Euros and saw them lose again. And I mentioned this in the intro that there was, a lot of people saying like, England keeps losing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You guys just won. And now we can say you won again. Like, England keeps winning. What are you talking about? But there is, I found, and I'm sure you find as well, still that kind of culture that women's football is not equal to men's football. And I don't necessarily, I mean, I guess I could understand that argument when you watch the gameplay. Like, you're not looking at the same pace, I know is the biggest argument that men are making right now. But I guess just talking about Scotland in particular, what are the differences between the men's and the women's football and just the attitude surrounding it?
Yeah, well, I guess to start off, football across Europe, but I'm going to say in the UK in particular, is deeply misogynistic. And there's a couple of reasons for that. But the number one that I think, it's not based in science, it's truly just a theory I have, is because historically in this country, men found community at work, right? Like, we had a great mining industry in the UK where, the vast majority of people working down there were men, and they were spending a lot of time together and they were forming those bonds. And as we've moved towards more kind of separated workspaces and more kind of gender inclusive workspaces as well, that sense of community for men has really diminished over time. And there's really few spaces where men feel that they can be together and be safe and protected in their little bubble. And so I think football is really one of the kind of last remaining areas in which men feel they can be men in the kind of, most loose sense, because historically in the UK at least, football has been the place where people can scream, shout, swear, destroy things, drink to excess. There's been a real culture of kind of destruction around football for a long time, which has gone largely without consequence because it's so difficult to deal with those large numbers. And so have always struggled to manage the behaviour at football games, which is, for example, why in Scotland you can no longer drink. They no longer serve alcohol in football grounds.
Really?
Yes, because it was so bad.
It's not too far. Yeah. Wow. I didn't realize that it was like no alcohol sales.
Yeah, and we had a real problem with kind of sectarian violence as well, because our football clubs, Celtic and Rangers in particular, the two major men's clubs, are rooted historically in religion. And British nationalism or Irish nationalism. And so there's deep-rooted historical ties there, which have just kind of created a vitriolic and misogynistic environment.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the women's game in Scotland, the major differences you see with the men are, firstly, the vast majority of women's clubs are associated with men's clubs. So, for example, you have Rangers and you have Rangers women, you have Celtic and you have Celtic women. But those associations are not always bound through financial support and through facilities. So, for example, a lot of the clubs in Scotland run their women's teams through their academy, which is a kind of non-profit charity side of their team, which develops youth levels and then kind of has the women's teams, as a separate branch of that.
Okay.
Additionally, the stadium size is nowhere near what the men are playing at. The Scottish women's national team, so are, internationally, they do tend to play at Hampden, which is the national stadium, the same as the men, which is great. But they fought for that for many, many years. And the crowds that they get are at best maybe 6,000, 7,000, which is really low. And, we would love to capitalise more and get some more eyeballs on that game, but it's going to require kind of systemic changes in the Scottish Domestic League to try and encourage growth, to try and get people invested. But yeah, I mean, if I can take an example, Rangers women, Rangers play at Ibrox, which is in Glasgow, which is one of Scotland's big cities. Rangers women usually play in Broadwood, which is in Cumbernauld, which is about 20 minutes away from where I live, which is kind of an offshoot of Glasgow. It's maybe 30, 35 minutes away driving.
Yeah.
Going to be difficult to get there from public transport. And so, as I say, the kind of infrastructure surrounding the women's teams in Scotland isn't great. And it's to add another layer to that, we have, I think, 5 professional women's teams in Scotland right now, but our top flight league has 10 teams. And so 5 of those teams are part-time. And the women are working, as social workers, as nurses. They're doing other jobs as well as trying to play football as best they can.
Okay, interesting. Well, a couple things that you said there. I mean, I totally do agree with that theory. I mean, I have my degree in psychology, so I know that there's obviously so many ethics boards and stuff when it comes to research, but you said that it's not backed in science. Like, it would be so interesting to figure out a way to actually make this a scientific thing, to figure out what's going on with the idea of just men really just not being okay with women's football, like if we're just gonna use that blanket statement there. And of course there are the men who are all for it and just kind of changing that narrative. And I do think the Lionesses in particular, well, I was gonna say I do think that they're changing things, hopefully for women's teams all across Europe and the rest of the world. Like, I know when they had their parade just recently, there were, I don't know the exact numbers, but just the turnout that they had and the support that they have, even going back, I guess, from the last time that they won, there definitely has been a shift for the positive, which I think is really amazing. But then at the same time, and I saw you made a really funny TikTok just kind of talking about this, there was that interview, I guess you can call it. I don't know if it's a popular talk show or interview show in England, but somebody called in and they essentially just said that they feel that women's football is being forced down their throat, and then go on to say that women shouldn't have a place in the men's game, and that they just can't stand the women's voices, the commentators, and that they should have a separate channel. Then it kind of, the clip cuts off and is like, well, do you have a wife? Like, it just kind of sounds like you hate women, like you just hate the voices of women, and it's not really a women's football thing. It's a rooted in misogyny thing. And I do also think, too, I mean, who knows about this man in particular, but I'm sure he's not a horrible human being. Like, I do think that, well, yeah, who knows, but I do think that there's a lot of men, and maybe I'm being too gracious towards this, but that aren't absolutely dirtball people, but they do just have that deeply societal misogyny just rooted in them because, like you said, they feel like they don't have space, or they feel threatened, that manly, destructive, I like the word that you used there, that space is being threatened by women, which I laugh at a little bit because it's like, it's just football, but essentially it is just football. Like, why can't women enjoy that too? So definitely an interesting, I think it is a societal thing, really, and it would be so interesting to research what that piece is.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think, anyone who's benefited from oppression is going to be really, really active in wanting to maintain the structures of oppression because they've directly benefited from it. And so it's with understanding that I approach this topic. I completely understand why some men act the way that they do now, why some men feel threatened by this, why some men feel like it's being shoved down their throats. And perhaps I understand why some men feel that there shouldn't be women commentators in the men's game, and maybe we should only have women commentate on the women's game. And it's with a sense of kind of understanding for that logic and their experience, but with zero empathy and zero sympathy for that point of view, because it's not rooted in a deep understanding of these kind of societal structures. How do we get people to understand these really complex societal structures? I don't know. Let's get everyone back to university. Let's pay for more degrees for everyone. probably. But yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think we talk a lot about the male loneliness epidemic here in the UK. But I think, over the next kind of 5 years, this problem is only going to grow arms and legs and arms and legs and arms and legs. And we're going to have to confront it societally very, very soon.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's such a good point, and I love what you said. I definitely think I'm gonna make that into our little clip for the episode of you have understanding, but it doesn't come with any empathy for this situation. Because I agree, and honestly, as you're saying this, it makes me a little bit fired up because it's like, women and in society, and maybe because we are educated, like whatever it may be, we do have that understanding, and we are able to see both sides of it. But then you have the other side, typically men who are just deep rooted in this misogyny. They can't see the other side at all. There's no understanding. It's just tunnel vision. And sometimes it is frustrating that we are expected, I guess, to have this understanding. But I think it's nice being able to have an expanded lens and mind on the topic. But I agree with you, there's no empathy. Like, we live in 2025, it's August, it's honestly almost 2026, and it's just, if you are going to stay in that, I was gonna say so long ago, but I guess for you guys 1998 really is not that long ago, but if you want to stay in 1998, that's what you're gonna do, that's fine. But the rest of the world is moving on. Women's football and women's sports as a whole are doing some really great things and are increasing in numbers, and it is really cool to see. Before we get into our last question for you, I guess let's try to put a bit of a positive spin on it. Have you seen any changes for the better when it comes to the attitudes surrounding women's football?
Oh, tons. Tons. Always, all the time. I mean, I think to tell you a story, well, I don't want to go into his life history, but my dad is a football guy. He's always been a football guy. And, the fact that he wanted to come to Switzerland this summer, when he knows fine well that I could have gotten a media pass, I could have sold my tickets, I could have just gone by myself. For him to turn around and be like, actually, I want to come, I want to be a part of that. That was really, really cool on a personal level. But more widely, I mean, working in women's football, particularly at the kind of national level, getting to cover the Scotland games. Firstly, they won in getting to have those games at Hampden, at the National Stadium. And yes, they're maybe not filling the stadium yet, but for, young people to come and see the national team, whether it's men or women, at the national stadium has been enormous. And I think the Scottish FA have actually done some really, really great work surrounding those games to try and make it almost a bit more like the American or the Canadian model. You're not just going to see the sports, you're going to the experience of it.
Yeah.
So the kids are getting face paint. There's performers outside the stadium. They come in, they get a program that they can sit and enjoy, and there's light shows and there's music. And so I think, at that kind of high level, that the Scottish FA are really trying to push the women's game, and there's a lot of advertisements. If you drive around, you're going to see billboards. In Irvine, there's a mural of one of the players on the side of a building. So there's definitely been a lot of kind of positive shifts that, for me, again, when I was a kid, I was going to a girls' soccer camp and there were 3 other girls showing up.
Yeah.
And so to now see, the women playing at the National Stadium in front of 6,000, 7,000, 20 years ago, that would have been unthinkable for me.
Yeah.
20 years ago, the Scotland women's team were, not playing at the National Stadium and not having crowds. I don't even know if you paid for a ticket back then. I think they just kind of gave them away.
Yeah.
And so the changes have been really, really positive. So yeah, it's been great to see.
Love to hear that. I'm glad that we were able to end that on a positive note. However, we are going to go back and be a little bit negative. Because my last question for you, and this has been such a great episode, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your expertise and your actual, your real life experience. It's been so cool to hear, so thank you. But obviously, the name of the show, it's called the Name One Player podcast, and I think when you are a woman who loves sports, work in sports, you get hit with the whole, oh, well, do you even know what you're talking about? Can you even name one player, 3 players, 5 players, all of that? But, I mean, it's a lot more than that. It really is that systemic idea that women don't deserve a place in the world of sports. So, do you have any stories that relate to women in sports and not having that even playing field in the eyes of men in particular.
Yeah, and I guess I'll preface this by saying that if you're a woman and you're listening to this and you've never gotten involved in sports and you're thinking about a career, you know, the glass ceiling won't break unless you punch it hard enough. So we need a lot of heavy hitters. If you can throw a punch, get in the fight, and pick up a job, because 98% of the time, in my experience, you know, the reactions that I've had and the experiences have been really, really positive. And there is a career for women in sports if they so choose it. But that being said, I do have a story for you. And it is, I remember it so clearly because it was the first time that I ever covered an NWSL game. And I was overjoyed. Like, I felt like it was the best day of my life. I was so excited because to me, that American League has been so well established. It has so many superstars. And I was going to an Orlando Pride game where Marta was playing, and she is like the best of all time.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I rock up, media pass, I check in, everything's going well. I'm sitting in the kind of press centre at the stadium, and there is literally not another woman there. I'm the only woman. And that is quite rare, especially in women's sports, especially in women's football. To not even see another woman out of like 25 plus people here was quite weird. Anyway, I just did my job. I was typing away. I had a great time, talked with some of the other reporters there, and then did the press, and then sent the piece off to my editor, and then the game was over and I left. By the time that I had driven from the stadium to my hotel, I had an Instagram message from one of the male reporters there, and it was basically like, can I take you out sometime on a date? Like, you're really pretty. And I'm sure some people would take that as a compliment, but this was like the cornerstone of my career, right? Like, this was the NWSL. And I was the only woman there. Immediately, like, I felt like someone had just popped like my balloon.
Yeah.
Like, had immediately been so devalued. I was like, okay, now you don't see me as a journalist. You see me as a pretty face that you want to task out on a date, and that's why you're being nice to me for the last 3.5 hours. So I just remember feeling like, oh, this is why there aren't other women that work this stadium regularly. This is why other women don't want to be in the press pool at this event. Yeah, I remember feeling so demoralized by that experience because in the first place, you know, if someone's working the first day at a job, you don't ask them out. That's not what you do. So just on that kind of foundational level, that was a red flag. I just remember feeling so deflated from that experience, and it really took, you know, a hot second to build back up from that. And I think also when you complain about that kind of like, you know, romantic or sexual interest from a man, people go, well, you should be grateful for that. Like, isn't that what you want? Isn't that what all women want?
Yeah.
Not really. I'm working. Like, I'm here to do my job. I want to be taken seriously. So yeah, that sucked.
Wow, okay, what a good story because you said the word deflated, and as you were telling me that, that's exactly how I felt for you, just deflated. Like you're saying, like you mentioned, the cornerstone of your career. This is such an incredible opportunity for you. And it really is that conflicting of like, well, somebody was kind to you. Well, I don't know, kind is the correct word in this, but somebody was polite too. That's definitely not the right word that I'm looking for here, but somebody reached out to you, asked you out on a date, whatever. And typically, like you said, in society where women are supposed to be happy about that. Like it's supposed to be a good thing, but like you said, this is your job. You're on this high of covering this game and just it's so exciting and that just deflates it. I'm sorry that that happened to you and that timing of it and what a good point. Like what a red flag honestly if you walk into an office job and within 5 hours somebody's asking you out. That's odd. That is odd behavior. Any man listening to this, don't do that. That's strange. Because even too, like if we wanted to give this man the benefit of the doubt, there's so many other ways to continue a friendship or to continue speaking to you in a way that doesn't make you on it like almost negate this whole experience that just happened. So yeah, that's really unfortunate, but I think so good to highlight that this is happening and there is that idea that it's like, no, you should be happy. Like you were asked out on a date by a man and also like you work in the same area, like that's really exciting, all like common interest or whatever, but it's not. Like you're there to do your job, and especially being a woman in sports, it's such an accomplishment to be in those rooms and to have that just turned into a dating show is like not what you're there for at all.
No, no, not at all. It was yeah, it was just really unfortunate, and I think, I only covered the game and then I left. But I was thinking, if I was regularly stationed here, all of a sudden you've made it uncomfortable to come to work.
100%, 100%. Did you reply to this person?
I did not. And because I
No.
knew I was only working there, a kind of one-off, I didn't even tell, I just moved on.
Yeah, but it's also too, it's like, what do you reply in those situations? What, there's, yeah, I mean, I was gonna say there's no guide for women working in sports and how to be, yeah, that's so interesting because there is this additional layer of almost professionalism that women need to have that men obviously don't in their minds feel like they need to have. And again too, if we're going to provide some grace and some understanding but not necessarily empathy, it's like maybe this guy genuinely didn't even cross his mind that what he was doing was not okay. But that's not okay in itself. Like the fact that this whole population, maybe I shouldn't say whole population, that's an umbrella term and I try to not use those, but a large majority of a population that's working in these fields just doesn't see that side of it.
Yeah. Yeah, a little more self-awareness wouldn't go amiss.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing that story, Maddie. That's, again, not great that that happened to you, but an amazing story, and I think so important to be sharing that side of it. But yeah, again, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate all of your insight with women's football in Europe, specifically Scotland, and your experience actually being at the Euros. So cool.
Thank you. No, thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Yes, of course. All right, Maddie, thank you so much. Thank you so much to Maddie for that amazing conversation. I had an absolute blast. I hope you guys had as much fun listening as I did having that conversation with Maddie. Obviously, talking about sports is so much fun. It was really such a good time getting into her experience at the Euros in Switzerland, but I also love having those really important conversations surrounding misogyny in sports because it's alive and it is, I was going to say it's alive and well, but it's really not well. I guess the misogyny is saying they're kicking there and they're like, yeah, I'm good over here. But it is unfortunate that it's still so prevalent. And I think it's really important to keep having these conversations and highlighting these issues because, of course, it's gotten so much better. Like when we look at, like I said before, at least even in England, like the difference in tone surrounding the women's team, the Lionesses, but at the same time, literally, this clip was from a few weeks ago saying that this man does not like women's voices and feels like women's voices should not be involved in the men's game. I encourage you all, if you haven't heard this clip, to look it up. I think it's called LCB was the show. It's alarming. Honestly, it is alarming to hear, but even if you don't listen to that exact clip, I can pretty well guarantee that you've heard that sort of sentiment said at some point. So as much growth and change for the better that there has been in terms of women working in sports, women playing sports, sports leagues, all of that good stuff, there's still a lot of improvement that can be had for women to feel safe and comfortable because that's something that women deserve to feel. Everybody deserves to feel that way. Everybody. So the fact that there's an entire population of people who don't always get that just because they're doing something that they love sucks. I don't know that like we'll just use that as a word. I wasn't allowed to say sucks growing up. That was almost like a swear word. So yeah. On that note, again, thank you, Maddie, for coming on. It was such a great episode. I appreciate it. But yeah, I think that's really it for me. We are back to our regularly scheduled day of posting You will hear from me next week with another episode, and I'm so excited to get that one out to you guys. I hope you all have a fantastic week ahead of you. All right, everyone, take care. Bye.